What's up, folks? Welcome to the Couch Connect. My name is Joab, and today I'm here with Farrah. How are you doing, Farrah?
Good, how are
Well,
you?
there's two couches today.
There's two.
Normally, I have one couch.
It's a chair and a half. It's a couch.
Yeah.
We'll call it a couch for now.
A moment ago, we were talking about smart cars and AI and how AI is the future. And then one of the crew members said that AI is not the future; it is
The
the
present.
present. Yeah.
Terrifying.
Are you afraid of AI?
I don't know. I think it's a fear of the unknown. Like, I am not a computer whiz. I get like the gist of how AI works, and it's, you feed information in, and AI can like data mine and that kind of stuff. But I don't know. It's like the good and the bad. It's great for some things, but I mean, there's people out there in the world that are going to use anything for bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are you afraid that people are going to use AI for the bad?
Yeah. I'm
Okay.
afraid that I'm going to get a call one day and it's going to sound like my husband or something and tell me that there's a terrible accident. I need to get down here right away.
Yeah, I had a case of someone, I think was it in China? They got a video call from the company executive, and they were telling them to transfer.
Video
Yeah,
call?
can you imagine?
That's insane. A video call with AI on the other
Yeah,
end. No.
yeah,
And they're like, oh, you got the biggest job offer of your life. Quit now and move. No.
yeah. In this case, I think they wanted to transfer money to another company, and they transferred, I think, $400 million.
No.
Yeah,
You see, that's what I'm saying. AI can be great for one thing, but terrible for another thing.
yeah,
I love the AI where that you like put in a code and they give you like a picture of something.
yeah,
Those that I can work with.
yeah,
That I can
and you can
jam
use
with.
that for your presentations and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I don't no need to do the drawings anymore in
Yeah,
PowerPoint. Put the
yeah.
circle and the square together.
Yeah, I think I've asked Dali to give me images, and then he's given me these weird images. I think I once asked for an old guy who's holding a stick, and then it gave me a photo of an old guy, but the face was indecipherable. It's kind of like blurry, and
Oh,
like you don't have
yeah,
a
yeah,
pretty well-defined face. You can, that you can tell that this is a
yeah.
person.
You know
Yeah.
what? I've tried like the chat GPTs out there and that kind
Yeah.
of stuff, but the AI that has given me the best picture so far is the WhatsApp AI.
Yeah.
That's crazy. It's the what like it's on my phone now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they put it on it's on Facebook too. And so like those AIs can give you really nice pictures. Like they don't need that much of a prompt.
Isn't it scary that now someone can basically, even this text message that someone sends you is probably, not original?
I know. It's like how do I respond to this?
Yeah,
Yeah, that is scary. Like who am I talking to now?
yeah, exactly. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm afraid we're going to get to a point where your son, you will
Yeah.
be texting you, and they'll be texting you basically with the
Yeah.
assisted robot.
Yeah, like how do I ask my mom, can I go to the park by myself? And they're like, it'll be like a five-page essay about why he should go.
Yeah, I mean, the thing though is that I think you can always tell when someone
Yeah.
has used AI. I mean, it's not natural. It's very robotic. It's
It
very,
is. And
yeah,
it really is depending on how well you know the person, because then you know how they speak, you know how they text. And then you're like, you didn't type this.
Yeah.
You could, yeah, it's easier to pick out like that. But if it's like from a random company, you're like, okay, it kind of sounds official.
So now I'm scared that sometimes the way I speak and the way that I write is very different. I mean, especially when I'm writing
Yeah.
scientific papers or whatever, I'll be writing very differently, and it's very easy to mistake whatever I've written for an AI generated content, because the way I speak or the way I would normally write an email or a text message is very different.
Oh, but well, that's because scientific writing is totally different too. Like, in no shape of this world would I like be talking to you like, oh yeah, I was baking something and I aliquoted the cupcakes. There's no way I would be saying something like that, right?
Yeah.
So scientific writing is like, there's no way you could say, oh yeah, that was not written by you, because it's the type of words that you use, right? So, I mean, like, but then again, like AI, when you type in certain things for AI for like scientific reading, for scientific articles, sometimes it's so wrong that when you're reading it, you're like, this AI does
Yeah.
not know what I need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I've also run into that so many times. I'm trying to prepare something, and then because I'm running out of time, I will go to ChatGPT and ask, what's going on here.
Yeah.
And then it gives me something so wrong that I would never dare use it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
ChatGPT is sometimes good for telling you exactly what not to write. It's sometimes really good for that.
I met someone in the past week. He's a prof over at Schulek, and he told me that he pays the $20 for OpenAI's GPT-4, and he uses that to create his lectures. Literally, all his lectures are created
No
from
way.
GPT-4. And so what it does is that he would take about a week to create the lecture, though.
Yeah.
I mean, he has all this content from the previous lecture. He would update it on GPT-4, and then he would give more prompts to try to skew that a little bit to make it make meaning, and then bring it over to PowerPoint or Canva or whatever he's using to make his slides, and then he would edit the hell out of it. And so it takes an
Yeah.
entire week for him to make his lectures.
Well, I mean, if you really suck at making a presentation, I see how that can work. And I mean, like, as long as you know the content that you want to put in, you're editing it so that it's correct and the message that's being sent to the students is correct. I have no problem with that. I mean, in bio, one of the assignments I think was the professors would give you 3 answers for a question, and then you would have to say why this one you think was written by AI or why you think this one was written by the professor. And so that, like, they're training students from like the beginnings to like really recognize where AI comes in and how AI can be wrong in a lot of things, and to not really rely on AI that much. So I appreciate those types of assignments because it still like pushes the students to think about things.
Yeah. Earlier
Yeah.
on, we talked about baking a cake and aliquoting 4 quarts of, I don't know.
Yeah, aliquoting my cupcakes into my tin. Yeah, there's no
Yeah.
way I would say that.
Do you love baking then?
I enjoy baking, but nowadays it's more about baking with the kids. So like I had this conversation with somebody the other day. Growing up as a child, anytime I would be like, Mom, let's bake a cake, she would pull out like the Betty Crocker cake mix. And be like, and she'd be like, okay, come on, let's bake a cake. And then as I got into my teenage years, I'm like, why do we always bake this like box cake? Like, it's so easy to make a cake from scratch. Let's crack the eggs, measure this. And so you make it from scratch. And then when I became a mom and my kids are asking me, Mom, I want cupcakes. Mom, can we bake a cake? I find myself reaching for that cake mix because it's less work, but it's more time you get to spend with them instead of policing how much gets measured. Right? So I understand why my mom always reached for that cake mix, because it was like it was a little bit more fun, a little less like, hold on, we need like a teaspoon of baking soda. It was less precise. Like you dump it in, dump everything, mix it up, lick the spoon when you're done, and that was all good.
If you were baking by yourself,
Yeah.
you would go through your own recipe.
100%. If it was just me and I had the time, I would make everything from scratch, like really put my time and effort into it. If I'm baking with the kids, we're doing a box cake, we're doing a pre-mix, whatever, and we're just they're just stirring. Because that's all they really want to do. They just want to stir. They want to see everything get mixed.
Yeah, they don't want to be reading, through the...
No, they don't want to have an instruction manual telling you, now add this, now add this. No, they want to dump everything, mix it, like throw cake batter all over the place as they're mixing. That's all they really want to do.
Yeah, and how's your relationship with spices then? Do you add a lot of spices into your cakes then? And,
Spices are like my love language.
oh,
I love adding like different spices to different things. I love walking down the aisles of like different supermarkets, different like ethnic supermarkets, to just look at their spices that they have. Like I like being of Guyanese background, we have like very specific spices that we use, like curry powder, garam masala, jeera, those kinds of spices, like cinnamons and like all clove and those for baking. But I walked down the supermarket of like a South Asian supermarket one day, and I saw dried ground mango. And I never saw that before. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting. So I want to know what to do with it. I want to see what these are. So like I like incorporating different spices, but of course you stay true to your roots still. So you use the spices you know how to use so that you don't mess up.
yeah. I mean, my experience with spices, man. My background, my culture, we have very flat food, so we
Yeah.
rarely use spices. I'd say in my specific tribe, our foods would tend to only have salt.
Really?
Something like that. Yeah.
Oh.
And so when I try out all these spices and stuff like garam masala, which you mentioned, I think I've seen that in a bunch of South Asian, Muslim, and some of the coastal communities in my country. So I could try those. But when it comes to anything that is hot,
Yeah.
so like anything can be measured on the Scoville scale.
Yeah.
I can do. Is there anything like 0.01 Scovilles? Is that
I think that's black pepper.
okay? Yes.
Black pepper might even be higher than that.
What I say is this: food is so comfortable.
Yeah.
Why are you making it so hard to eat, so painful, making you
You sound
tear?
exactly like my brother.
Okay.
My brother doesn't like spices. He likes. Here's the thing. There's flavorings that you add to food, and then there's the heat that you add to food, right?
Who needs who needs the heat?
Some foods you need the heat. There's some foods where you're eating it like curry. You're eating curry, and if you're eating curry without that heat, it doesn't feel right like in your body.
Yeah.
Like it tastes. Yeah, you're eating it like yeah, this is curry. But if you don't have that little like it doesn't feel right. Like it needs to have some sort of spice, like some sort of heat to it. Like yeah, you can add like your cinnamons and your allspices and your cloves and whatever, but you need to add a little bit of pepper too.
Okay, so would you experiment with other cultural foods or other cultures' foods?
I tried to I tried like experimenting with like the Asian cuisines. Like I have gochujang in my fridge that I'm like, oh well, let's put this in something that's a little noodly. Maybe it'll work. And like, I do enjoy watching like the food channels and that sort of stuff, and looking at how people cook things around the world, because it's interesting. Like it's like oh I and then like being of an Indian descent, looking at Indian chefs, you're like oh we have something like that, but we don't cook it that way. Like our lab mate, she's from Bangladesh, and we were having a conversation the other day, and I was telling her about this eggplant that we coat in this chickpea flour mixture. We fry it, and she's like, "Oh yeah, we have that." And I'm like, "Oh, it did translate across the ocean when we were brought over to the Caribbean, but then we did what we could with our spices." So yeah, I do enjoy experimenting a little bit here and there.
I mean, you're talking about experiments now. I know that you are a doctoral student.
Yes, I'm a PhD candidate.
Okay. Uh, and you talk about your Guyanese background. So did you grow up in the Carib in Guyana?
I have an interesting childhood. I grew up here. I was born and I grew up here until I was 9.
Here is
Here is Mississauga.
okay.
Right. I grew up here, and then at 9 we migrated back to Guyana, and I lived there until I was 9 to about 18, and then that's when we remigrated for like post-secondary education,
Okay.
so
So you
tertiary
came back to
education.
Mississauga for your secondary education.
Post-secondary.
Oh,
So
post-secondary.
university.
Okay.
Yeah, tertiary education,
Okay,
if
I
you
see.
will.
Mississauga is a city in Canada, just next to Toronto.
It's to the west of Toronto. It's a suburb. It's beautiful. It has lush green yards. You can walk on the roads and be comfortable.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I've seen the roads in Mississauga. They're pretty massive. I
The-
mean, you got streets that are 3-lane streets. They're like
Yeah.
eastbound, westbound, northbound.
Yeah,
southbound
we
lanes,
have
yeah.
pretty our even within like our housing communities, it's wide roads because you park on the side of the road and that kind
Yeah,
of thing. Yeah.
I've seen that. And then your sidewalks are always neat.
Oh, they're always
Yeah.
neat. That's what I'm saying. Mississauga is you drive out of Toronto into Mississauga and you're like, you just take a deep breath.
Okay. I mean, don't associate us folks who live in Toronto. I mean, we have smaller streets, but we also
Yeah,
got
I mean,
bunch of nice
I
things.
lived Toronto adjacent. I lived in Scarborough.
Okay.
I did and then like travel downtown. I know people are going to be like, "Oh, Scarborough's not Toronto." I know Scarborough's not Toronto. It's a different name, Scarborough. But yeah, I would never move back to Scarborough. I would never. I'm sorry. I love Mississauga.
So now your experience then, through that entire, growing up in Guyana and coming back for your post-secondary education, what does that transition look like? And then how does it build to your experience as a PhD student?
So I think growing up here first, I was in like elementary school. I got the foundations, and then going back to Guyana, having the difference in primary education to Canada, it was a little bit drastic to me. Like it was the things that they expected you to know was like very like by the book. Like over here in Canada, I remember distinctly we were learning like multiplication tables, and like to do multiplications by your nines, you use your fingers. Like 9 times 2, you go 1, 2, and this would be the tens, and this would be the ones. So it would be 18, and then like we do like skip counting where we do 2, 4, 6, 8. Whereas in Guyana, one of the exercises during math in elementary school, one student stands in front of the class, and as the class, you have to repeat what they're saying. And they would stand up in front of the class and go, 1 times naught is naught, naught, 1 into naught, naught. 1 times 1 is 1, 1 into 1 is 1. 1 times 2 is 2. And it would be repetitive, and we would do that from our 1 times tables all the way up to our 12 times tables. And I remember that being like so in like shock, like what are these people doing? Like just do 2, 4, 6, 8, 3, 6, 9, 12, right? But no, you do it. That's how you learn your multiplication tables in Guyana. And so like even so when I moved back to Guyana, I was technically in grade 4, which is primary 2 in Guyana.
Yeah.
And then like we were given like composition writing and that sort of thing. Like we were expected to have a topic and write like a full 1-page composition.
Yeah.
And in grade 2 over here, I was like, we never did that.
Yeah.
So it was like much more intense, much because at the end of grade 6 in Guyana. Now, when I was growing up, we were in primary 1, 2, 3, 4, but now they've changed it to grades. So in grade 6, which is grade 6, the same age your grade 6 over here,
Yeah.
you have to write this thing called the National Grade 6 exam. When I was growing up, it was called the Secondary School Entrance Exam.
Yeah.
So your entire elementary school, you're preparing yourself for this gigantic exam at the end of your elementary school. So yeah, you're preparing your entire elementary school career to write this exam. And it's like in May or June, I can't even remember when, in grade 6. And what they do is they then like grade you entirely against everybody in the country. And then they set these like standards. They're like, okay, people who scored 100 to 98 will go to this high school. People who scored 97 to 96 will go to this high school. And so even the high schools are ranked. Like there's like the best high school, the second best, third best. And you get into those schools not based on where you live, but based on how well you did on this exam.
Yeah.
And I didn't do that great. I got into the third best high school, but I loved the high school. And regardless of what anybody says, it was still a good high school.
What's the name of the high school you went to?
St. Stanislaus College.
Okay, St. Stanislaus College.
St. Stanislaus College. I know and I married, my husband went to the first best high school. He went to Queen's College.
Okay.
And every time I say Queen's College, I roll my eyes because up to now, he's graduated high school almost 20 years. He will still talk about Queen's College.
Yeah.
And I'm like, get over it. It was 20 years ago. just like it's okay. And so, but like even back in the day, back in like the 1950s, 1960s, high schools in Guyana were also like boys and girls high schools. And so there's like this running joke, oh, QC boys, QC boys. And so like my husband's a QC boy because he's a Queen's College boy. And he's like, and he would always be like, oh, don't feel bad. You couldn't get into it. It's okay. And I roll my eyes so hard.
Yeah.
Because look, is being in high school in Guyana, it was, again, you're preparing your entire high school career for a massive exam that you write at the end of grade 11. Yeah. And so it doesn't matter. It matters like how well you're taught. And I feel like as long as you go and you do the work, you're going to do well. And there's this culture in Guyana where you go to your high school, you go to your regular classes, and then afterwards, everybody goes to after school classes.
Yeah.
So I don't know if...
Work harder.
Work harder. So like you're in school. Some people go before school. Like my husband went before school. I couldn't wake up early enough to go before school. So some students were in school, in classes from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. all because they're writing this big exam in grade 5. In grade 11, sorry.
Oh,
grade
okay.
11.
Grade 11, okay.
So, and that exam is called the Caribbean Secondary School Exam, CSEC, Caribbean Secondary Examination Council. I can't remember what it stands for.
And
but
this exam is done by all the Caribbean countries?
It's done by the entire Caribbean, and then you're ranked according to the Caribbean. So it's run by the CXC, so the Caribbean Examination Council. And so you write like biology, chemistry, physics, English literature, English language, math, social studies, Caribbean history, geography, information technology, you like business, all those, you write a whole bunch of courses. And growing up, there were people who were writing like 20 subjects. And I'm like, who are you? Why are you writing 20 subjects? And like I think I wrote like 8 or something like that, 8 or
Wait,
9.
so they are writing 20 subjects in
Yeah.
this one exam.
So they're writing like chemistry, biology, physics, English language, English literature, math, geography, English, IT. And so they're writing like every single subject possible they're writing. And it's madness to me. Like,
I think that's
why?
a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. And to be honest, it was a lot of Queen's College people that wrote these exams.
Did your husband write 20 exams?
He's going to kill me. I can't remember how many he wrote. I don't think he wrote 20. I think he wrote like 10. I can't remember. I honestly can't remember. But I know he did very well. And I would be remiss when he wrote the common entrance, the entrance exam to high school. He got third in the country. So I would
okay.
I did not do that well, but he likes to remind me. Oh,
Yeah.
I got third. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
Good, good for you.
Okay, so there's something you talked about here, Guyana and the Caribbean. So Guyana is in South America, though.
Yes.
Right. So which countries make up
The Caribbean. So
in South America? Per se?
so this is like a ongoing like argument slash discussion that a lot of other Caribbean people have with Guyanese people. I mean, yes, we're not in the Caribbean Sea. So there's countries that the Greater and Lesser Antilles that lie in the Caribbean Sea that are all considered Caribbean countries. And then there's countries like that are closer to South America towards the end, Curacao and those countries. And those are considered Caribbean countries as well. Guyana, yes, is in South America. But you have to look historically. Like when slaves were brought over from Africa, they were brought into the Caribbean and also like the South America. When Indian indentured laborers, by the way, it's Indian Arrival Day in the Caribbean this
Today.
month. This month, yeah,
Okay.
May 6th, I want to say, is Indian Arrival Day in Guyana. That's when the first ships landed with Indian indentured laborers in Guyana.
Okay, just to make a point, we are recording this on May 2nd.
Yes. So like culturally, historically, economically, like even like food related items are all like very similar within the Caribbean. And when the Caribbean was formed, we formed a thing called the Caribbean Community, which is CARICOM for
CARICOM,
short,
yeah.
right? CARICOM, I can't remember what year CARICOM was formed, but there was a Treaty of Chaguaramas that was signed. And the 4 countries that signed it first,
Guyana.
Jamaica, Barbados, Trinidad, Guyana,
Okay.
right?
Yeah,
So yes,
CARICOM has been
and
always
the
that.
CARICOM headquarters is located in
Guyana.
Guyana.
Okay.
So I think that's why we are considered the Caribbean and not South American. Also, like culturally and all those other things, we're not as related to Venezuela and Peru and Colombia. Like those were all settled by the Spaniards. Brazil was settled by the Portuguese. Suriname was settled by the Dutch. French Guyana was settled by the French, still a French colony. Guyana was the only country in South America that was settled by the British. And so, the other islands were also British islands. Trinidad, Grenada, those were British islands. So.
Now you're a parent, right? And so first of all, let's talk about that. So how is it being a PhD student and a parent at the same time? What is that experience like for you?
I would like to say it's not much different than somebody who has like a regular job,
Okay.
right? Because yes, your life still kind of revolves around your kids, right? Like you drop them off at daycare. I have a little bit more flexibility, maybe even a lot more flexibility than somebody who has to be in the office, has to be online, has to be in like wherever they have to work at 9, because I have more flexibility in that I can drop my kids off at school a little bit later, a little bit like 8:39, come drive into campus and then start my work at like 10. So but then I also do try to work up to the very last minute that I can until I have to leave to go get them from school. And so I think that's where I have a little bit more flexibility, where somebody who works from 9 to 5, they have to drop their kid off at school, like before school. They have to get before school, daycare or whatever it is that they do, and then they have to do after school as well. So, and then when they leave work at 5 and they get to wherever they go, everywhere it's like an hour commute, right? So I think I have a little bit more flexibility than like somebody who actually has like a very strict 9 to 5 job. So I do think it's a little bit better than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so when you first landed, you were pregnant. You were a student already, right?
I was finishing my first year. Yeah.
Okay. So what was that experience like? Were you scared at
Oh
all?
my God, I was terrified.
Okay.
I was absolutely mortified to tell my supervisor that I was pregnant. And I was like Googling and checking all these blogs. I'm like, I'm pregnant and doing my PhD. How do I tell my supervisor?
There was no chat GPT at that point.
There was no chat GPT at that
Point
point.
of view,
So
yeah.
it was like all like blogs I was looking at. And they're like, oh, well, when you tell your supervisor, you have to lay out a plan.
Okay.
And be like, yes, I'm pregnant, but I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And I tried so much to play down my pregnancy because I didn't want to be seen as like this person who's just like, oh, la-di-da, like whatever, she's almost gone, right? I still want to be seen as very serious about my degree, very serious about the research and wanting to get this done. So when people were like, oh, are you pregnant? I'd be like, yeah, but I have this experiment I have to do.
Yeah.
So
you had to add that comment. Okay.
Yeah. I would be like, oh, so I don't think I really like celebrated my pregnancy while I was on campus. I was more celebrated like at home with my family and friends, which I think there has to be like a separation as well. Like yes, we're all friendly. We're all like, yes, our little lab family as well. But yeah, I'm not going to tell you what's going on at home.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to tell you about my like bathroom that needs cleaning because it hasn't been cleaned in a month, right?
Yeah.
So
I hope that you clean your birthday.
you know, that's this weekend. That's this weekend.
You somehow navigated it even if you're mortified.
Yeah.
So I was mortified too.
Yeah.
But then again, I shared my mortification.
Yeah, you were open about it.
Yeah.
You were like, I don't know what to do. You were actually, it was very refreshing to see how honest you were, that you were so like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. But it's you're doing it.
Yeah, somehow I'm managing.
You're
I guess.
managing.
Yeah. And so let's talk about, so now you have these 2 kids and you raised them. And, going back to your cultural background, growing up in Guyana, do you try incorporate, whatever you learned back home or the culture or, some anecdotes that you got from your childhood into your children growing up?
I do want to make sure that the kids know their background. So my husband and I are obviously both background Guyanese. So we want to make sure that they know that their culture is Guyana. Yes, they were born in Canada, but culturally they are from Guyana. This is where we get our foods from. This is where we like at home, Guyana, just like all the Caribbean islands, there's a dialect that comes with it. There's certain things that we say that only like if you say to a Guyanese person or would understand. Like if I was to tell you something,
I would be like,
like don't wait for rainfall for build shelter.
Okay, I'm looking for shelter.
So it basically means like don't wait for hard times to like prepare yourself.
Oh, okay.
Right?
So look for my shelter now. So I was not very far off.
You were very far off. So yeah, those things, right? So like those cultural sayings, I do want to try to incorporate so that they know that where they're from, they understand that culture. Also, my parents still live back there.
Okay.
So I do want to take them to go see my parents and that kind of stuff too. So I do want them to know that they're Guyanese. I don't want them to be, I remember when I was a teenager and I came over to visit like my cousins and stuff, and I would meet their friends, and their friends were also of Guyanese background, and their friends would find out that I was from Guyana. They would try to talk to me in this like really weird Guyanese accent. And I would look at them like, why are you talking like that? Like, we don't talk like that.
Yeah.
And so I don't want them to be these like pretentious, like fake Guyanese.
Okay.
Right? Like I want them to like be Canadian, but know that they're from Guyana and appreciate their background and their culture and what we've done.
And growing up, was there corporal punishment at all in your culture?
In school, there was.
Okay.
It was weird. That was a different culture shock as well. We all got in trouble, and the teacher hit us all on the hand with a ruler, and I remember being mortified. I remember saying, I'm never coming back to this school again. I remember telling all my friends, my dad's going to pull me out of this school.
Yeah.
I got in the car, and I told my dad, and my dad was like, okay, what did you all do? And my dad's like, go back to school the next day. Yeah, and in high school, there was as well. We would, it wasn't so much like beatings. We would be told like if the class misbehaved. I remember this very distinctly. The entire class was disruptive for the art teacher, and the art teacher had it. She's like, everybody kneel down on the ground, and we all had to kneel down. And the schools back home were all like the classroom that we were in was like a wooden floor. It was
Okay.
like wooden panels. It was all uneven, so like you
Yeah.
had to find a spot so your knee wasn't like too
Yeah.
rough.
Yeah.
And then we would be kneeling down. We're still like whispering, talking to each other. Teacher got even more pissed. And she's like, "Okay, everybody, grab your bags. Put your hands up with your bags." Yeah, that
Okay.
that was the
That's a workout.
punishment. Yeah, so we would have to stay there. And I remember at that point, I was probably 13 or 14, so I gotten accustomed to the idea of the corporal punishment. I was just like, okay,
What would you do if someone did the same to your child now?
over here, in
Wherever, I don't know.
wherever, I think I would lose it.
Mm-hmm.
I would be like, listen, this is not how you deal with things, right? No, we're not beating our kids. We're not hitting them. We're not like we're very much into this not gentle parenting, but more authoritative parenting.
Mhm.
I think it's authoritative.
Authoritative. maybe,
Authoritative, where like they know that you're the
Mhm.
one in charge,
Yeah.
and they need to listen to what you're saying.
Mhm.
But we also know that they're little people and they're little humans and they have emotions and they're unregulated right now.
Mhm.
So that's the type of parenting that we do. So like when we're having like a full-blown tantrum meltdown, we don't tell them, "Oh, stop crying, I'll give you something to cry about," which is something I was told growing up.
Yeah.
That we like try to calm them down and tell them, listen, why are you upset? Tell me your reason for being upset. Let's solve this problem together.
Mhm.
So like trying to like show them that like if you need help, I'll always be there for you.
Mhm.
Whereas like when I was growing up, if I would do something, I'd be like, oh my God, I can't let anybody know. I can't let, I'd try to solve the problem
Mhm.
myself.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah, and then this, I guess, brings you closer together. You have this bond.
Exactly. So
Mhm.
that's the type of parenting that we're trying to do. And then like we do timeouts. Like we do like if like sometimes they're having a tantrum over the weirdest thing. Like what was my little one, he's 2. He is potty trained. And so we told him, okay, pick your underwear for today because he woke up, he was in a pull up, we were changing him. Okay, pick your underwear. He picks his underwear.
Mhm.
And I go to put it on him. And he's like, I don't want this underwear. I'm like, well, which underwear do you want? Let's go pick one. Like, it's fine. Okay, we can pick one. I don't want any underwear. And like, it was a full blown cry session about not
Yeah.
wanting the underwear. And I'm like, but you need an underwear. So there's certain things where like, no, you need this. Like, you have to brush your teeth. You have to wash your hands. Like, certain things that are non-negotiable, like you need to be clothed, you can't run around, like you can't go to school naked, right? Like certain things where like they have to listen to us, they need to pay attention to what we're saying.
Yeah. So when you became a mother, um, I guess you're talking to a lot of people. I mean, they had advice for you.
Yeah,
How did you go around with the advice that came from everywhere?
there's some good advice and there's some bad advice.
Okay.
There really is some good advice and some bad advice. Like there's like with my oldest one, he had some eating difficulties where he wasn't interested in eating,
Mhm.
but he needed to eat. Like he would go the entire day and like have like 2 bites of something, and people are like, well, just leave him. He'll eat when he's hungry, but he never did.
Mhm.
You would be like, he has to be hungry. And so when you would sit down with him and be like, okay, let's eat this together, he would gobble it right up.
Yeah.
Right. But like if you were to put it down in front of him and tell him, okay, have something to eat, he's like, nope, I don't want it. I don't want it. So like it took a
Yeah.
lot of like coaxing and like, okay, come, let's go eat this. Oh, do
Mhm.
you want to read a book while we eat? Do you want to play with your car while we eat?
Yeah.
So it was a lot of that. So like, oh, leave him. He'll eat when he's hungry.
Mhm.
Never worked.
Yeah.
Never worked. And like another piece of advice I got was when they were sleeping at night, and you know they're fed, they're dry, there's nothing wrong with them, but they're up.
Mhm.
Like, oh, just leave him. He'll go back to sleep by himself. No, like he's like clearly wanting something. He might want
Mhm.
a little cuddle. He might want to have a little chat. You know, he
Mhm.
wants something.
Mhm.
So like ignoring your child is not like on my parenting list. Yeah.
I was talking to a friend of mine, and we were having a chat, and they told me that. So what he did with his kids is that I think when he got his first kid,
Mhm.
he'd put the kid to bed all the time
Yeah.
and grab the kid's hand, like let the kid grab, I think, his finger or something to
Yeah.
fall asleep and stuff like that. and they literally slept with the baby the entire time. I think they were like 2 years. So then they got other kids,
Uh-huh.
and they learned that if they just let the kids down to sleep, they would sleep, throughout the night.
Yeah.
And so I guess they tried both, and it probably worked for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? Having a second one, you've learned that, yeah, 100%, your kids are not the same. They're like, there's no manual for parenting, 100%. Like, there's always advice, there's always things that you can try to do. We had our first one, we had our own issues with him, and then we had the second one. I anticipated certain issues, totally different issues. So like things that that we had problems with the first one was fine with the second one. Things that were fine with the first one, we had problems with the second one.
Okay.
So like they were total opposites.
And so when you were, when you were becoming a mother, I guess you read a bunch of blogs, like you say, you probably read
Yeah.
papers and stuff like that. And I want to believe that in these blogs and whatever you were reading, it is possible that you found some myths, misconceptions. That looking back now, they're probably myths or misconceptions.
Yeah.
So what are some of those myths and misconceptions that you can remember that you've heard or heard other people talking about or read somewhere?
One thing I read and I found it, I don't know, it might be true, but I found it to be very odd. Like, if they have something in their eye or if they have a little bit of an eye irritation, drop some breast milk inside.
Okay.
And I was like, I guess, breast milk is very high in like different proteins and blah, 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 blah. And then I remember taking my older one to the eye doctor when he was, I want to say 2, just because he was premature when he was born. So we had to follow him through with an eye doctor to make sure all the blood vessels were formed properly.
Yeah.
And I remember telling the eye doctor, oh yeah, he had a little bit of irritation. I read somewhere that you could put breast milk in it.
Yeah.
The look this man gave me he looked at me like I had 2 heads. he's like, why would you put that in his eye? I'm like, I read it somewhere.
Yeah.
He's like, not everything you read is right. I know that, obviously.
Yeah.
He's like, he told me that infants at this age, their tears are so well lubricating that, just he'll wash it out by himself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, well, yeah, don't do that. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like you're kind of trying to, you figured it out. Being in academia.
I don't
being a
think
mother.
anybody's ever figured anything
Okay.
out because every day it's a different thing.
Okay.
Right? Like I have a little bit of a stuffy nose and sore throat, and then I like count and I'm like, okay, by day 5 days from now, one of these 2 kids is going to get sick. So like you try to do everything, try to mash all your academic work, all your experiments into those 5 days so that you can be off to be with them, to be home. And then when they don't get sick on that 5th day, you're like, oh, okay, I have more time to do stuff.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
you can get to do more stuff. So there are probably a bunch of people out here who are probably parents or trying to balance demands of parenting and school. They're probably immigrants,
Yeah.
into different countries. I don't know.
Yeah.
So what would you tell them that would probably give them some hope that everything's gonna be okay? I mean, it doesn't matter where you are.
Should I give them a hope? Like, I
don't
guess everything's going to be okay.
Okay.
I mean, here's the one thing that actually you always hear. You always hear, it takes a village. It takes a village to raise a child.
Yeah.
So you have to be very selective of your village, right? Like I have the luxury that my mother-in-law lives with us. And so she's a huge part of our village, right? Like if I have to come into school, I'm lucky enough that she's there. She can watch the kids for me,
Yeah.
right? So some people aren't that lucky. Some people who have immigrated by themselves into a country, into a city that they have nobody, right? They don't have anybody to rely on. So they have different struggles than I do, and I feel for those people, right? Like I want to be a part of your village. How can I help you, right? So yeah, it will be okay, but I mean, it takes time to build like that village that you need to help you, because you also need that village to help you in your academic success as well. Like I think we have a pretty good village in the lab right now. Yeah. We're going to go solve a problem after we're done with this, right?
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I guess this has been nice hanging out with you on these 2 couches.
On the 2 couches.
Yeah, we'll catch Farrah again soon on probably another episode, and
Sounds
we'll get
good.
to talk about a little bit more stuff.
It was a pleasure being here.
Yeah, this has been the Couch Connect, folks. Catch you on another episode pretty soon. Adios.